The 2017 conflict between ranchers and the police on one side and well-armed herders on the other was perhaps most intense on the land of famed conservationist Kuki Galman. The dispute between Kuki and members of the Pokot community, many of whose ancestral land borders Kuki's conservancy to the west, had been brewing for years. But something happened to harden these views. On April the 23rd, 2017, just 2 weeks after our interview with her, the 73-year-old conservationist was shot and badly wounded while on patrol on her land. As attacks on ranches spread across Laikipia, the police stepped in to rein in politicians who were believed to be fanning the violence. Thomas Minito and then MP Matthew Lempurkel were arrested several times and charged with offences varying from incitement to violence to the murder of British rancher Tristan Vospoy. Then, on Tuesday the 16th of May, Minito was picked up from a hotel in his home county by men that witnesses claim identified themselves as police officers. There would be no news of his whereabouts until 4 days later. His body was discovered floating in the Oldonyo Sabuk River, hundreds of kilometers away. We visited his home a day after his body was retrieved. This is our second attempt to speak to the family of Thomas Minito, who was murdered just a few days earlier. This indeed is the boundary to his home. And we've just been met by a wall of silence. The tension and the emotion there is so raw, and nobody wants to speak to us about it. But it's ironic that he lives here, and right over the hill there is the start of the Laikipia Nature Conservancy, where Kuki Galman lives. She may be a villain to some, but to others, Kuki Galman is a generous landowner who opened up her home to people in need during the drought.
Mama yetu acha Mungu. Mungu atasimamisha. Mungu atasimamisha.
But at the heart of the conflict that got her shot and caused the violence in Laikipia is land. With Kuki and many of the ranchers in Laikipia often painted as remnants of Kenya's colonial past. Laikipia County was home to the Maa community before their land was forcefully taken away from them and privatized by the colonial government. This map of Laikipia from the Laikipia Wildlife Forum website shows just how many ranches and conservancies are in Laikipia, which also has a high concentration of wildlife. The comparison to colonialists doesn't sit well with Kuki, who is a Kenyan citizen.
I simply want to say this. I own this piece of land. We bought an existing company. I'm not a former colonialist taking over anything. I came from Italy after independence. There was a company for sale. We bought it. If that transaction is put in doubt, every transaction after independence can be put in doubt. And that is the destruction and the falling out of law and order.
Those who have agitated for community rights, will put it in the context of historical injustice. But here is my view. And I'll be first to accept there are historical injustices. So you can't now walk up to me with a big AK-47 and say, I owe you. How can I owe you? We are both victims of the colonial injustice. But we are here now.
Kuki Galman does not run livestock. She doesn't keep livestock on that land. It's a lot of it's just sort of virgin bush. She's surrounded by pastoralists who have lots of livestock. And the drought comes along and these people are pressed for grazing. They will come in there. And as long as there's hostility between the two of them, and we don't have any agreements allowing this use in and out, not all of it, obviously, but part of it, then peace will continue to be elusive. And the pressure will not diminish with the time, it will just grow. Simply because in that part of the country, it is socially unsustainable to have 100,000 acres of land with no livestock on it, surrounded by hungry livestock.
Mordecai Ogada, a carnivore ecologist and the author of a book that is controversial in the conservation community in Kenya, believes that the pressure on land needs to be looked at differently if Kenya is to avoid the violence witnessed in 2017.
Land tenure is such a difficult issue. I think we would do better as a country to look at land use. Now we should have a situation where someone with a big tract of land like that, in that place, we need to have some arrangement by which it can be used itinerantly or temporarily by some of these herders who come in, and in the interest of peace, without having any questions on the ownership of the tenure.
But something else beyond conflict stands out about Cookie's land. Seen from the ground, one may not notice it, but a satellite image of the conservancy shows that it is a green spot surrounded by an ever-browning landscape. The role it plays as a water tower for the Laikipia West region can't be denied, especially in the context of a region whose rivers we have witnessed become little more than barren trenches of white sand. The question of access to good pasture is one that pastoralists all across northern Kenya have to face. Last year, that search ended in deep loss, as the government stepped up its efforts to get pastoralists who had invaded private land out. Among the victims was the elderly Lemuron Lenakukuya. He's from the neighboring county of Samburu, but drove his cattle hundreds of kilometers from his home into Laikipia. Many of them never returned. When we met him in December of 2017, many of Lokoyan's cows were in bad shape. These are the lucky cattle that survived when the government turned its guns on the herds of pastoralists who had moved into Laikipia.
Iko mpunja mkuu na iko na rasasi mkuu chini karibu na nini ng'ombe hii. Tena ngine iko marasasi hata iko ndani ile ng'ombe nyeupe. Na hii ilikuwa imepikwa pale chini, natoa ile nini, natoa kodole.
We found him seeking refuge in the home of a fellow Samburu pastoralist, 70 kilometers away, were the cows he had to leave behind. But wild dogs are the luckier animals on this day. Lemuron had already lost a majority of the 147 cattle he claims he owned. 2 months later, in February 2018, we went back to meet Lemuron.
Naona mbona iko ng'ombe hata moja. Basi serikali imemalizika. Kuna ng'ombe ngine. Lakini ng'ombe ndio nasoma kijana yangu. Yote kijana yangu ndio yote amekuja hapa. Sasa karibu mimi nakunya, najua dip. Mimi karibu nakunya dip.
Lemuron held on, but he says the stress was too much for his wife to bear.
Sasa we bibi yangu kama nasikia ng'ombe nakufa, yeye anasutoka, yeye nakufa. Mama ile ya kijana yangu. Hii bibi yangu ya mbele. Kwasa.
We circle back to Samburu, where we first began our story in September of 2016 to see what effects the drought has had on the people here, and we're looking for an old friend.
Dawn's just broken. We're trying to get an early start. And about a year and a half after we met Otiriman and Leshekwet, we're heading back to go and see how they're doing. And I wish I could say it was going to be a happy meeting, or that it's going to be a happy meeting. But we hear that there's been some bad news.
The search for pasture in Laikipia ended on sour notes for many here. But Leshekwet and his group of young warriors drove their cattle in the opposite direction towards Kom. Today we meet further upstream on a dry section of the riverbed of the Wasonyiro itself. My first question to him is about his group of warriors. I heard that they ran into trouble.
Watu 7 ya Borana, tena watu 5 ya Wasamburu. Mwingine ni semeji yangu, tumbo moja na bibi yangu.
Leshekwet would head back down to Losisia, where we first met him. Here, on the banks of the Ewaso, water still flows and grass can still be found. But that's no secret to the communities here, and they weren't the only ones who were looking to stay there this time around. He claims that they were ambushed by members of the Turkana community.
Ukifikiria kuhusu vita ya bunduki, nakumbuka ile siku wakati tulikula mbuzi na nyinyi, kulikuwa na huyo kijana alikuwa anacheza hiyo flute. Ako wapi?
Sasa tena watu walikuwa nimeoa hiyo kijana bana.
Hebu nieleze nini ilifanyika.
Hiyo tulikuwa nimepeleka ile bor nyinyi iko hiyo siku hiyo. Ng'ombe hiyo bor yote nimepeleka na tulikuwa.
It saddens me that Leshekwet would have to lose such a close friend. But as we talk, it becomes clear to me that for him and the pastoralists of the north, death is as much a part of their lifestyle as is living to see their herds grow.
Nasikia mbaya, lakini tunasikia tu mbaya, lakini hakuna namna kwa ajili hii ng'ombe ni kazi yangu tu, hakuna kazi nyingine.
Ni maisha yako.
Ni maisha yangu. Hata watu kama 10 tunapotea, iko tu hiyo kazi.
Kama watoto wako wako nini, wako shuleni sasa hivi?
Mtoto yangu ya kwanza yuko shule. Lakini ni mdogo.
Ungependa aishi maisha kama hii yenye unaishi ama unataka aishi maisha yani?
Hai. Sasa atataka watoto yangu kuingia tena hiyo maisha mimi iko na.
Ungependelea nini ifanyike na maisha yao?
Afadhali watoto tunaingia shule kufanya tu kazi ya shule.
Leshekwet is a product of a legacy of pastoralism that he is proud of. But even he senses that the changing environment is making his way of life a prison. But there is hope. 4 county governments in the north are looking to change the fortunes of people just like Leshekwet through a Marshall Plan of sorts for the livestock economy called the Amaya Initiative.
There are certain people who romanticize pastoralism as though somehow, it is believed we as pastoralists, we are very happy to walk for 200 kilometers in search of water. My personal view is that we are not happy to walk for 200 miles looking for water. It is that we have no other option. And I think other than romanticizing that kind of thing, we should look to modern ways of keeping livestock.
If I had the power, what I would restore is not to give people, okay, now take this land and use it. Open the stock routes. I'm in the middle of doing some survey on this for some project. At least 80% of our stock routes, of the ones I've looked at so far, are gone, have been blocked by landowners.
If technology allows you, Alan, to have 10,000 head of cattle, prime cattle, isn't that better? Wouldn't we hold you in higher regard than when you have 300 squirmy animals that are walking up and down?
Beyond investment in new methods of keeping cattle, the more fundamental issue here is access to water itself. Leshekwet sees the Wasonyiro River drying up before his own eyes and feels powerless to stop it. Almost every day on the banks of the Wasonyiro River, you will find men hard at work doing this. Sand harvesting from riverbeds is illegal in Kenya, but you wouldn't know if you visited Isiolo or parts of Samburu.
You know, if you're looking for evidence of what happened to the Uwasonyiro ecosystem, then you don't need to look too far. The footprints lead directly to humanity's doorstep. So that means that nature hasn't changed. It's human activity that has. You can't look too far for that evidence, as you can see. But what is it that we can do to ensure that ecosystems like the Uwasonyiro, places like Laikipia, and other areas that are under severe strain, stop being under that strain? That's a question not just for nature to answer, it's for humanity to answer as well. Because if we leave that answer to nature, we won't like it.
Upstream, Emma Odera, who works with CETRAD, a government training and research facility on arid areas, says that climate change isn't the only factor in reducing water levels in the streams and rivers that drain into the Uwasonyiro River.
There's a lot of abstraction of water within the ecosystem, and even illegal abstraction of water by people who are not really registered.
And up above her, the protectors of the Mount Kenya ecosystem also see the hand of humanity in conflict downriver.
We should be worried about the forest, the indigenous forest, the moorlands, the swamps, the bogs that hold rain and hold water.
In the coming years, we'll have to do a lot of extensive agriculture and intensive too. And this one will mean more use of water to feed the growing population. How will these people survive?
Already, the impact of population growth, poor water usage, and water wastage is being felt. In both 2017 and 2018, the Kenya Red Cross has issued drought response alerts, warning that up to 3 million Kenyans face severe food shortages because of an intense drought season. Many of these people live in the Uwasonyiro Basin. Approximately 3.6 million people depend on this basin.
Around the Mount Kenya area, Aberdare Hills, for example, ranges, for example, if you can do catchment rehabilitation through tree planting in the area, it can really help. If you can maybe do spring protection. There are many springs emanating from Mount Kenya ecosystem, from Aberdare ecosystem. If you can do spring protection in these areas such that they are really, really protected, they are really, really conserved, then that one will lead to recharge of water.
So we end our story as we started it in 2016, staring at the splendor of Kenya's main water towers, whose rivers quench Kenyans' thirst. But understanding the complexity of conflict that has ended lives here, that has made some people targets and made others paupers. And knowing that the weight of the challenge of replenishing our forests to save our future can best be seen at the end of the river. Thank you.